Let me just say how thrilled I am to be here, and thank Trav for inviting us here. This is, as I understand it, it's the 100-year anniversary of, to this day, when the Marx Brothers had their first Broadway show just a few blocks away. So to have a clap, I should say, my name is Jason Zinoman. I cover comedy for the New York Times, and to have this event about a comedy legend with a comedy legend is an incredible treat. Sounds like you all know Robert Klein, so he doesn't need an introduction. One of the greatest to ever do it. We're going to talk a little bit about his relationship to the Marx Brothers. Then, because, as I told him before, we can't waste the opportunity, we got Robert Klein here, there's too much interesting things to talk about. We're going to talk about his career, and we're going to open it up for questions. So start thinking about questions, because we'd love to hear from you. So first off, you were born in the Bronx, Robert.
Yes.
And I wonder if you remember the first time you encountered the work of the Marx Brothers.
Movies on television, interrupted by commercials. And my mother would say, "Oh, they're so crazy," and my father loved them. And their physicality, their bad behavior, which is not atypical of why we love W.C. Fields or all the other ones that smack people in the face, Chaplin and so forth. Anyway, it was early movies on television. That's where I saw them. Never in the movie theater till collegiate times and post-college at the Thalia and the New Yorker. And as soon as the black number went on, "Who that man? Had that in him." Even though they loved the Marx Brothers. And you had to tolerate that leading man in Coconuts, my God, and that woman, stiff. I think Groucho complained either in print or to Cavett about that. Also, Lillian Roth. I mean, I know she'll cry tomorrow, but what a terrible actress. Awful. And they were also, it was a stage production, so they spoke stage whispers, I just thought that Groucho, because You Bet Your Life was a favorite in my house,
right.
I associated the two.
What did you respond to about Groucho?
Wise guy. I knew he was Jewish, but they never said so, but it was a wise guy, he just got the best of anyone. And the people playing opposite him, like the actor in Animal Crackers, when he goes in that long, hilarious duologue with Baby the Fishman, when he goes, and in Central Park, and the other guy has to go, well, I am, that's a tough part. That's like people being sung to in MGM in 52. Oh, they say, what? It's a tough part. It's not talking,
right.
But it's tough.
Is this right? Your dad knew the comedian Myron Cohen?
Yes, they were piece goods salesmen. They were not very good friends, certainly not sexually, but he told stories. And my father had two breakfasts. He'd get up and have a roll of butter and a cup of coffee, go on the D train, and with the boys, have another one at the Waldorf cafeteria. And you get your ticket, get it punched, and Myron was among them. And he would tell the stories, all in Yiddish dialogue. You should go in show business, that kind of thing. My father was 100 times funnier. But he didn't have the Gazzolis to do it, like Rodney's, Dangerfield's friend,
Jack.
name.
Jack.
No.
Leonard.
Who?
Leonard, right?
No, who? Joe Ansis.
Joe Ansis, right.
I'm going to have a problem with that. I knew Joe very well. He was hilarious for 5 people, you know. And my father was an incredible improviser in mine, and he was a piece good salesman. The truth is, yes. And I've revisited it, and it's very one-dimensional. It's gentle and all that. I thought he was much funnier when I was a child on the Ed Sullivan Show.
What did your
I was watching the Ed Sullivan Show. When I was on the Ed Sullivan Show, I was terrified. It was live, no laugh tracks, no nothing. You're backstage. There were trained dogs that can do the calculus, but they can't stop shitting by the proscenium wall. And ballerinas, you know, at the bar, and it was maniacal back there. It was true vaudeville. And when it was tough, and Rodney used to say, I'll tell you, the Ed Sullivan Show, you know, there's 2 comedians. The other one hopes the other one does fair.
There's a documentary about Robert, which I highly recommend everybody watch. It's fantastic. And there's one scene at your house, and it's a quick shot of your bed, and above your bed, there's a Marx Brothers poster. It's not American, and it's at the circus.
Why at the circus? It's Spanish, from Spain.
Spanish. So why that one?
Tarde en el circus, or something. An afternoon at the circus. Which, let's get to the afternoon at the circus, or the day at the circus. It was still MGM, or was it just But there were other MGMs, but distributed by MGM, but not MGM, right?
Well, Paramount was earlier.
Yeah, but all the rest were MGM? Which one? Oh, Night at Casablanca, yes. Right. Julian Schlossberg owned that movie. I've been in the act for a while. To own a movie, own Night at Casablanca. Why cast Eve Arden? She's just as smart ass as Groucho. That was a very unfunny scene. To me, the getting on the train is marvelous. They changed that password, the usual humiliation of Groucho, and the scene with the little person in the thing, Stogie. Yeah, I just happen to have another one here. He's so idiotic, and it just, each time he does it again, the fact that Chico is so dense, and yet you have a feeling underneath he's doing it purposely to Groucho. Go ahead.
There's a story, I'm sure people here know if this is true or not, but I recently was interviewing Conan O'Brien, and he told a story about someone asking Groucho about the politics of duck soup. And he said it's about the rise of fascism, can you talk to us about what you were trying to say? And he says, what do you mean? It's just 4 Jews trying to get a laugh. I wonder what you think about that answer. Do you believe him?
No. I used to, but it may be my favorite. I've seen it, in fact, too many times, and I lean on my various things from Chaplin to Buster to W.C. to Gleason. I mean, I have to go away from it too. Having my primary interest since the plague, and I was out of work for 2.5 delightful years. The world was falling apart, and I was tired, and I was glad. You know that cliche about reading everything you want, and I'm a grandfather now. A lot of In Between Wars, bit World War I, reading a lot of In Between and World War II. There is no question that the people that wrote this movie were just under the influence of a completely ridiculous and disastrous war among cousins, in which the average person had absolutely no stake whatever. And for reasons of this, Louis Calhern being smacked and all is not really off the mark much. I mean, it was just, so I have to think that when you think about it in its time, the year it came out, what year? 33. Man, that's like nothing. 13 years after, 14 years after the war, when these guys wore those kind of costumes and were kingdoms and were empires, I think, I'm surprised. Maybe Groucho had a reason for saying that, or he didn't want to, because he is one of the great autodidacts of all time. And I think he should know better. But whatever, it was a hell of a funny movie.
Yeah.
And people loved it. And it's easy because they're so silly to lose the connection with the actual Great War.
So, Groucho died in, I'm sure people will correct me, 77, is that right? And you know, you met Groucho, how far before that?
I shook his hand when he did Carnegie Hall with Marvin Hamlish, because Marvin and I were very close. But that was nothing. The first time I ever I guest hosted The Tonight Show for Johnny Carson about 15 times, something like that, a dozen times. And the first time I did it, I get a letter from Groucho Marx. Wow. And I can't find the damn thing. I have it somewhere. I know it exists, so I know the important thing is not that, you know, it's an important letter. But anyway, he said, you were really wonderful, and you saved that girl. Who's the little one that Steve Martin used to go with? Bernadette Peters. These are my guys. Steve Weiner and his wife Laurie and Bob Greenberg are old friends. We've worked together, Steve and I worked together, and they'll supply all that. So where was I?
Bernadette Peters.
So she was talking about cockroaches and this and that. I didn't think it was so bad. She was cute. I'm okay. I'm not very nervous. I'd been on the show a number of times. And he said, you saved that girl, talking about cockroaches and this and that and this and that. He said, you were so funny. I laughed so hard, he said, I almost fell off my secretary's knee. And he said, you were wonderful. You were, you know, a few words like that. And then he said, next time you come to LA, I'll give you dinner. And he said, if I really like you, I'll give you breakfast too. So I forgot how soon after, but a few weeks, I had a gig to do Love American Style. I recently got a...
Wait, I'm going to ask you, what did you feel when Groucho Marx, this figure from your childhood, contacted you and said, you know, come on over?
I was very excited because Groucho, I mean, the letter was not Groucho-ish, except the jokes, but he used the word wonderful or something. He was so enthusiastic about me. It was exciting. But, you know, well, it was just plain exciting. Of course I loved it. But I was going to say, it wasn't like when I was 11 years old and I saw Mickey Mantle maybe 200 feet away and, you know, I was already working and I go, my God, Groucho Marx. Yes, it was thrilling. So when I go out, and I call him, and I said, Groucho, you remember Robert Klein? And he's like, I remember. Every time I told old actors, like George Burns, my name, I thought polite, they would almost take umbrance. You know, I know. When I had an audience with Carl Reiner less than a year before he died, I made sure I would visit him. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he said, oh, I remember you, when he opened the door. And he showed me, he had one of those elevators, but he walked up the steps to his bedroom and I went up there. So, where was I?
He invited you out to see.
I'm visiting Groucho. So I call him up and I say, you remember me? Yes, I remember you. Can you come to dinner? I said, well, Groucho, we're shooting at night. I can't come to dinner. He said, well, can you come to dinner? I said, well, we're shooting at night. So he said, well, can you come to dinner? So I wasn't sure if there was these little mini strokes or he was, that he had or that I'd read about, or was he being Groucho and putting me on? So I said, well, you said if you really like me, give me breakfast. He said, come for breakfast. So I went the next morning I think he wanted me there at 9:30 or 10, and this house in Beverly Hills, beautiful, not on the flats, but on a hill. It needed work. It was, aging, and it was a beautiful woman, a lovely young woman, not in a nurse's uniform, who was his nurse. There was a hospital bed, but he wasn't in it. He had black pajamas, and he was sort of chasing this cat who named Blackie. Remember Blackie? He was sort of preoccupied, Blackie. And he was all there, but old. And he told me that I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't fuck, he said. And there was a picture of Aaron Fleming and next to his bed, which he was mostly out of, and his Oscar. He had a lifetime Oscar, and he said, Erin wasn't there. I asked, where's Erin? Because I had met her, and he said, she's in New York on Groucho business. And he said, if I had to give up one of these, you know which one it would be? And he pointed to the Oscar. And after 2 hours with him, in which I had boiled eggs, a German European jam, a nice toast, she surprised him coming back early. She took a red eye, I don't know what it was, and she came in, and his face lit up. And of course, I left soon after. She really made his last few years happy. And I was more than willing to give a deposition to the lawyers. I know Cavett did, to say that she actually benefited his life. I asked him what the definitive book on the Marx Brothers was. I said, is it, I didn't know many, but I said, is it Groucho Speaks? He says, Groucho didn't write that, He came right out with that. Groucho didn't write that, And when I read it, by the way, eventually, with a preface from his son John, first of all, it was ghostwritten, but it was a lot of croquet. I don't see Groucho, the autodidact, the guy who knew Dickens and educated himself. Harpo was loved. I mean, no one, the son said, the only time I saw my father Groucho cry was at Harpo's. And the daughter in the documentary, the oldest one, Ruth, I think, right? Miriam, she would ride on her bike when her parents were arguing to Uncle Harpo's house. I don't see the intellectual thing. He was like, was he a toy for the Algonquin people? Because, Groucho was smart. So it was a wonderful visit, and he told me one other thing. I was playing, they did it, your paper did a beautiful weekend story on me in Arts and Leisure about a kind of new vaudeville, me playing theaters in Pennsylvania and here and there. And he said, there was a place in Pennsylvania, he says, my mother got hit by a trolley car in that city, Minnie. All right, that's it.
One last question about that before we go to your...
Please, I'm having such a good time.
No, you at that time, you're at the cutting edge of this new kind of comedy. You're starting, the both in the clubs in Second City. I'm really curious if you got a sense of what Groucho at the end of his life thought of the comedians of the 70s, of the young comedians of the 70s.
He loved them. He thought, let's face it, Cosby, I wasn't a big fan, but he was of that new, especially, not a big fan, no, but I did his show near the end. It's the last time I saw my dear friend Madeline Kahn alive. She told me she feels great and everything. He recognized his stuff. He loved Cavett's intelligence. Cavett wasn't a true stand-up comedian by any means, but he was wonderful. That was the genius of our manager, Jack Rollins, finding a niche. Cavett, Letterman, not really stand-ups, but personalities. I think he loved. He was very open to this thing. What I'm wondering to make the two, the past and the present meet. Is there an issue, for example, about Harpo chasing women who are in terror?
I mean, if you, is the question, would there be an issue today? Maybe.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you think?
Maybe, but
I mean, they're in terror. That's part of the joke. They're screaming. They don't have a smile on their face. I personally don't mind. All kinds of stuff.
Yes, this is a long day. Well, so what, I don't know if people know this, but you were at the start of two of the most storied and sturdy traditions in comedy that are still around. This is 50 years ago they started. You were at the start of you did the first HBO comedy special. You essentially invented the comedy special. And you were very early on in one of the first hosts of Saturday Night Live.
Fifth show, first year.
So I want to ask you a little bit about both of these. First, let's start talking about SNL. It's going to be 50th year anniversary next year.
Of SNL?
Of SNL.
It's also the 50th anniversary next year of the first HBO show.
1 month away. 1 month away. So much of comedy dates back from that, October and November of 1975. What do you remember from that first time hosting SNL?
Nervous. Everyone was nervous. I told Lorne Michael, gave him the worst advice that anybody could ever give. I said, don't do it live. I felt okay because it was already decided that I'm too advanced from Second City. I was 2 or 3 years ahead of the kids at Second City. So I'm going to be a host. They were terrified. And you know who was most terrified? The technicians, the cameramen. They hadn't done a live show in that building since Howdy Doody. And here they are. You're doing a live television show. I was on one of those, a dramatic thing with, I can't remember, about a newspaper going broke. Well, that was taped, but it was television. Anyway, they were terribly nervous. And I also remember Belushi, who was a lovely kid. I mean, it was such a sad thing. I wonder if the director of Blues Brothers, who was later indicted for having 2 children killed in his care.
John Landis.
If he could have done something to stop production for a week, anything. But anyway, Belushi didn't think the Bumblebee thing was funny. Or was that 77, the next time I was? But anyway, everyone was nervous. And because of the fact that it was live, but they were incredibly talented. And Chevy left after the first year, and Gilda and Madeline, who both died of ovarian cancer, which they still haven't found some puzzle. They just were.
You did the monologue in the fifth episode.
I did a monologue.
Did Lorne have any advice, or he said just do your stand-up?
No, Lorne was very uptight about me doing. I used to carry the American flag. I was taught in school, PS 94, don't drop the flag. It's religious. Like a thing, what is George Washington's and a pop out like a dude? Oh, you dropped me after all I suffered at Valley Forge, you little Jew boy. He was very nervous about Jew boy. And I wrote a bit about it. I said, they get too many letters from Alabama saying, why don't you say Jew bastard? I remember him also as a puppy dog coming to Rollins and Joffe's office at 130 West 57th, seeking advice. He was a pretty arrogant dude, but he's very, very successful, and he deserves a tremendous amount of credit. I literally have not watched it in years. I just simply, I never saw Friends, I never saw Married. My television tastes are different. Now, what's the other one you want to talk about? HBO?
Now, this I'm actually more interested in talking about. The HBO, the first HBO special in 1975, right around the same time SNL started, and Marty Callner, who I recently talked to, said, we want to start with the best. We're going to start with Robert Klein. This is before He started with you, and I contacted him before this, and I said, you know, what's the story from Robert Klein starting this tradition? You know, glorious. I would say it's as glorious tradition as SNL. These HBO specials, and he said there was one joke where you cursed, and you said, "What a catharsis."
That's right.
And this is the line that you really cared about, he said.
Well,
Not true?
I did that, and Marty was wonderful. He had his previous experience as a television director, I'm not making this up, was hockey. Consequently, plus some drugs, which were not uncommon then, there were few close-ups. He was a doll, and he became giant. Everyone associated with me became giant. The only person that did become giant was me. I didn't become giant. We got a call, Rollins and Jaffe, home box office from Time Life. It was Time Life then, I think, wasn't it? Yeah, right. And what about some, because I found out later from Scheffler, one of the guys who used to buy the films for them, HBO was renting these blockbusters that were in the theater a few months before, and you could see them at home with cursing and everything else, and without interruption. So the original programming, the guy's name was Harlan Kleiman, and he later became a investment banker in the West Coast, and I saw him when I played Feinstein's at the Regency out there in San Francisco. He died a few weeks later. Apparently he was ill and didn't tell me. But his idea was take a guy like Klein, a kid, and show him, instead of the 5 minutes on the Tonight Show, show him his real stuff, a college concert. I was doing all colleges and every college. So they sent an art director to various places I was booked, and they decided on Haverford College. Haverford and Bryn Mawr were presenting Robert Klein in a concert, and this auditorium had, you know, nifty busts of geezers from the 19th century and wooden, you know, it was lovely. It had pizzazz. So we decided to do it. At the time, they had 400,000 subscribers. They had got an art director, they got a scenic designer, and I knew I could say what I wanted. Now, I didn't work blue per se, but in person I used some profanity. The idea is when it's apt, it's part of the, E.L. Doctorow used it, and I could too. But it's not every other word. Well, I object today because it's kind of still can shock, and it can be funny, but you know, it's, to me, every other word is a substitute for wit. So I said shit, I think, or maybe fuck, I don't know, and I said, oh, what a catharsis. And that was it. And we also invented the backstage thing. Before I go on, you know, me looking in the mirror and being nervous and all, and we set the kind of template for future ones.
This is a significant thing. Every special after this has the moment before the person.
Most of them don't, they? Yeah.
You know, it's sort of a backlash to it now.
Well,
but
John,
you did it first.
Well, John O'Connor was the TV critic then, and he said this could be something. Paid television. Wap, wap, wap. I sometimes forget I'm such a pioneer. You know, I was on the original board of the Comedy Channel. It was called Comedy Central, right? And I had a show called Dead Comic Society, beautifully restored prints by that guy, Raymond Rowehouse, who, you know, instead of Chaplin being like beautiful and all that, and of course it lasted about 4 seconds because young people don't know from Charlie Chaplin or, you know, W.C. Fields or even the Marx Brothers. My child spent his first 6 years, my son, at the Hackley School in Tarrytown, and he came as, the teacher came as Groucho on Halloween, and he was the only kid that knew. I raised a Marx Brothers kid.
I'm going to open it up for questions in a couple minutes, just maybe 2 or 3. I want to ask two other things, though. You have, I mean, we've only scratched the surface, but one of the unique things about you is that you've had such a diverse career. You worked at Second City, you were on Broadway, you were at Yale Drama, right? You were at the Improv, at the stand-up. You have film, talk shows. I'm curious if you feel like each of these serve the other, or was it a challenge to sort of pivot from one to the other? From Yale, did studying at Yale Drama give you tools that helps you in stand-up?
Being versatile did two things that were positive. First of all, it kept me working. I didn't have to, as an actor, hang around for the next part. I could always work stand-up. I'm also trying to belch at the same time. It comes from being 82, and it reminds me that cucumbers are wonderful in many ways. They're nutritious, low in calories, and you can enjoy them for hours. The other thing it did was it kept me interested. The only one that was a bit sleazy was the record business. To go around to these disc jockeys, and Neil Bogart was a brilliant record man. He died quite young of cancer, but he and his brother, I forgot, and then they started Casablanca Records. Nobody played comedy on radio, and we had to push them to do it. But for the music artists, there was a lot of cocaine and money and bribes and things like that. It kept me interested, and I wrote a book, The Amorous Busboy of Decatur Avenue, and I really should have written 2 more, and I think maybe that's what I do now, because I think I want to stop performing stand-up. I'm very physical in what I do, and starting to catch up a little. I work out 3 times a week with a trainer for years now, but I got a little COPD because I was a smoker. And the book part was interesting. It was lovely. Theater was exciting. They're playing our song, made so many people happy. The sisters Rosenzweig, Wendy Wasserstein. I went to Lincoln Center the other night for a dinner and a reading of Chris Durang's play, and to see Andre Bishop, the whole thing was so beautiful. And it reminded me of Wendy Wasserstein, who was just a genius and a sweet woman who died young too. Theater was the hardest. Not many actors mention it, but Alan Arkin did. I had a wonderful time doing a couple of Zoom plays with him during the plague, and then we had to postpone one. He had a heart problem, and then he died about a year later, but I was in touch with him. He said this publicly, and Elaine May too, to do multiple performances, to be in something for a year saying the same thing. Now, mind you, I was getting well paid, and it wasn't coal mining. I'm not spoiled there, but the same, you have to find something new in it, and yet there's nothing like it, being in the room with people. With film, you have to do it again and again, but there it is. It's the weirdest thing. Turn on the television, and I often watch television, not what other people watch, probably, but I worked with him, I worked with her, and I see myself with sideburns down to here. I see myself like this. I think it's really strange, but it's a lifetime, and I think having yourself permanently in something like that is remarkable. So I think the answer is I don't think I was a master of none and a jack of none. It's something, whatever the saying was. I think it kept me interested in working, but I made my bones as a one-man show, singing and writing songs. My only 2 Emmy nominations were with Bob Stein for writing tunes for my HBO specials, 2 tunes, the colonoscopy song, and a song called Hymn to America about Barack Obama, Barack, keep it in your pants, please, because that kind of thing. I think stand-up always had the most personal. And also another thing I might say, that certainly after the first show or two, I had total freedom at HBO. Total freedom to cut it any way I wanted, to put in anything I wanted. Nobody has that kind of thing, you know. Right. And my albums, of course. And that also was pioneering because engineering a comedy album was very different in the 70s. All these guys did music, and it was much different. Same thing with the videos. They are live shows, taped, but, you know, we did editing. We
Right.
sculpted them, you
Right.
know what I mean?
Well, we've used up this time, so I want to open it up for questions. We got probably about 15 minutes of questions. Yes. We have, Trav's going to bring a mic to you.
It's Michael here.
Hello, Michael.
Thank you. It's interesting you mentioned that record, Child of the 50s, because you signed that for me many years ago. I had the vinyl, but it was actually at a Dick Cavett thing at Borders. I think he signed it. But anyway, it occurred to me, it was actually Larry Harris, his late cousin. He died.
He died, yes.
His cousin, first cousin. They started Casablanca.
That was Neil Bogart's cousin.
Yes, Larry Harris. A lot of nepotism with Neil. And he's born just like a year after you, very close to your age. But could you talk a little bit about that recording? I remember it was on Brute Records, distributed by Buddha, and it was one of the very last things that Neil did in '73, because he left Buddha and started Casablanca. This might have been the last project that he was personally involved with, but didn't you record it? I read something about you recorded it in some particular studio. Neil was there. Just talk about how you went about that.
Yeah, I wanted an album. Comedy albums were starting to creep up. Maybe George had one already, or Carlin. So I, on my own account, I spent $8,000 in 1973, 72, at the bitter end. I recorded it professionally, and it was great, you know. And we took it to Neil Bogart, who was Buddha Records, and at the same time, he was nurturing an unknown thing here, which was called A Now for Something Completely Different, an album of Monty Python, same album. Now, the reason it's Brute is because George Barry, who is the founder and large stockholder of Fabergé, maker of this phony Brute, that if you smelled it, you knew about this person already. No taste, and he had money. And he loved show business. He had Cary Grant, and we got to fly in his private jets and everything. So Brute financed it. We brought it to Neil. He loved it. He said, but I want to redo it in the studio. Why? Oh, I hear clinking glasses and so forth. You know, it was professionally done. So we redid it in a studio, Child of the 50s, and he invented a show to promote it called the Annual Robert Klein Reunion at Carnegie Hall. We packed Carnegie Hall with a very reasonable price ticket. I don't remember, $10 or whatever. And subsequent to that, we did, Charlie Daniels was on his label, and the audience, my audience, was quite rude with respect to Charlie, and that they were talking. They weren't shouting like Albert Brooks reported, Richie, whatever, you know, for the next act. But Charlie was very sweet, but he was a redneck kind of guy, you know. He was a right-wing fanatic. Anyway, I don't remember.
Okay. Any other questions here? Yeah, in the back in the aisle, please. Yep, you.
One of the most memorable sketches you were in on Saturday Night Live was the cheeseburger sketch. So I was wondering if you could tell us what it was like being part of that.
I was the first customer. I was the customer. I wanted eggs. I'm telling you, we could barely get through rehearsal because Billy Murray kept a complete straight face. I would never have guessed that he would have had the biggest career of all of them, including serious acting. And Aykroyd was committed to it, and Gilda. There was a sketch that we rehearsed that I don't think made it on, and Gilda made me laugh so much I couldn't keep a straight face. Do you remember a yogurt commercial? Mrs. Vostovska lives in Russia, and she's lived 101 years, and she's eating this yogurt. And so she's the old lady, and it's dripping all over her face. And she has a demented look on her face. It was a joy. There was also, marijuana, there was cocaine, there was outrageous behavior. The Radio City was and is still a beautiful, beautifully planned business center. They had very strict rules about things on the walls in the studios, NBC and all that. And, Aykroyd and Belushi had panties on the wall from women. And there was line of Coke on the desk, and, it was pretty wild. I guess there have been books, I haven't read them, but I've been asked about them, but I don't know. I remember, yeah.
Well, you went back in the season 3. Was it a different vibe in season 3 than
It was.
the beginning?
In fact, Lorne told me, he says, you understand the kids are the stars now. I said, absolutely. And I would have done more. I remember requests, and I had I think I was committed to Hooper with Burt Reynolds shooting, and I couldn't do it. And then for some reason, Lorne, who had sought advice from Jack Rollins, had some feud with him or something. I don't know, there was bad feeling. So I only did it twice. I probably would have done it a few more times. It was, nerve-wracking, but also it was big time because I wrote a sketch for the first show for Belushi and me, of exterminators, and one of them is a conscientious objector. He can't kill him. And, I give a whole lecture about cockroaches, and damned if they didn't build them. I heard $1,100 it cost them, the art department, to build history and dinosaurs, and there's live. They call them water bugs in Houston for their sanity, but huge cockroaches. And we had them from the Museum of Natural History, live animal crossing the thing, and I'm with, gear on, this military gear with Belushi. So, it was big time money. Oh yeah, we can do this set and that set. So it was a thrill. It was big time. It was big time. And then Rodney asked me I'll tell you, they asked me to do this Saturday Night Live thing. Should I do it?
You said yes. Yes, sir. Right, second row. Yeah, we can hear you.
Go ahead.
It's fascinating to hear a great comedian analyze the work of others. And thank you so much for the insight you gave us into all this stuff.
Oh, thank you.
But I'm wondering if you could, if you wouldn't mind, just give us your analysis of the strengths of Harpo and Chico. Because so much is about Groucho all the time, and I'm wondering if you would do that for us.
Yeah, well, I like Chico. I began to like Chico more. Harpo, well, I love them all, but I have to say Groucho is my lead Marx brother. I guess maybe knowing a lot about Chico too, his degenerate gambling, his very touching. His daughter Maxine used to be a casting director in New York for commercials, and she gave me a galley of her book, and she just sees him as this wonderful, and he loved her, and he once said to her, I'm sorry, I wish I were Harpo, then I would have money for you and all that. He was the one yet that made the deals. He was the one that played bridge with Irving Thalberg and made the deals for them, which is interesting. He threw away his own money. And Groucho Julius was grouchy in the sense that his brother was a pain in the ass. But yet, they always spoke. Chico, his outrageous street smarts and he's sitting at the piano and knowing that he was stooping all the women surrounding it at one point or another. Stooping, you know, it's a sexual connotation for
This
those
crowd knows stooping.
Episcopalians in the
Yeah,
crowd.
yeah.
I saw this pathetic ad the other day. Please don't hate Jews. They gave us words like schmagegi. And I swear to you, it's time to go to New Zealand in another. I saw Leopoldstadt. I'm not fucking around this time. No, really, please. They gave us words like schmuck. I don't want to go. Never mind Salk and Einstein and Robert Klein and any schmagegi. So anyway, in the evaluation, I think as an older man, Harpo strikes me as childish a little more, but I loved. The first thing that made me love him, and I still do, was his exhausting, his muteness, which, if you look from another point of view, is frustrating. He's trying to tell him something and can't by, no, it's no snake. And then when he collapses after one of those sessions, but the thing that makes me laugh to this day, he said, how long? About a half hour. He said, hey, he's getting his nails done on monkey business. Hey, you're a pretty good little gal. Hey, you got it. He said, thank you, and you can keep it. I don't know why. That just destroys me. There's a line of You Bet Your Life where this World War I veteran is going on and on about, yes, he saw Eisenhower. Eisenhower was president at the time this was filmed. And yes, sir, Groucho, and then I went up to him and I said, Sergeant, sir, reporting for duty, sir. And he said, oh, Groucho, I could tell you so many more. And he goes, fortunately, we're short of time. And the guy is a hero. People would say, thank you for your service. Fortunately, you showed a type. That's why, because Groucho is in control. And as the films, one after another, after Day at the Races, there's a significant decline in repeating themselves, which all artists did, frankly. And yet, in every one of them, there is something funny and worth watching. When in Casablanca, the Sid Ruman is still hilarious for them. The chase at the end is painful again because it's almost, there's Nazis involved now, you know what I mean? It's, and also when they have to be sentimental, they were never sentimental in the Paramounts. The racehorse and all that, when Groucho has to be. Even in Room Service, which is I hate to see Groucho as a worried supplicant. Is that a good word? Yeah. Mr. Brent, you can't do it. I don't want to see Groucho. And the college one is pretty good. I mean, they're all good. When they don't work together in, Copacabana? They're never in the same...
Story of Mankind.
Love Happy. They're never together because they did this damn thing for Chico, right? Because... It was Harpo's picture. Chico got it because he needed the money. He needed the money, but didn't they do it for Chico's sake?
The producers said, well, we got to get Groucho and then we sell it as a Marx Brothers picture. It was supposed to be a Harpo movie.
Right. Well, one more thing I want to say.
Yeah.
It was like I hate to say, bucket list thing, but I always wanted to hear Harpo's voice, and I finally heard it. It's on the internet. When he's telling a story about anti-Semitism, his son John described it as like Groucho, but softer. It is that accent, and also, I had lunch at some posh, I played the McCallum Theater a few weeks ago in Palm Springs, and Lucy was there, and Larry Luck and Bill. And that day I had lunch at some posh country club that the Marx Brothers belonged to. It was the Jewish country club, because when they got there, Jews were not allowed in the other country club, and there was an armed guard at the parking, you know. We gave you schmuck, what do you mean? Bubula, come on. Michigas, Maureen Dowd uses it, for Christ's sakes. They gave us for Christ's sake. No, they didn't.
All right, we might have time for one more question. Anything? Yes, sir.
Robert, great album, of course. Child of the 50s.
Yeah.
Were you involved with the design of that album cover? Because it's such a classic photo. And one more last question. Rollins and Jaffe were your managers, same as Woody Allen. Did you guys cross paths at all?
Did we
Did you
what?
cross paths with Woody Allen at all? Because you were.
Was I friends with him?
No, just cross paths professionally or friendly with Woody Allen.
You crossed paths with
Oh,
Woody
yes,
Allen.
mostly at Nick games. No, he could be at the office. Jack had 3 daughters, like King Lear. And I saw Hillary not long ago. I got, by the way, a Lifetime Award. Not the one I want. I want a Mark Twain Award.
There's
but
still
I got
time, still time.
The Lifetime Achievement Bistro Award. And I said I'd be so much prouder if I knew what a bistro was. I mean, did I ever work in a bistro? So Cavett and Woody were like sons to him at one point, because, you know, before they didn't need that kind of thing, I became his sort of son. Woody was inscrutable in a way, and I was always disappointed in him before anything. By the way, I don't think that he molested that little girl. I do think he did enough damage to that family for a lifetime, although he's still married to her. He broke up a family. But Jack took him to see me at the Improv, and I killed that night, and he never said a word to me. Like when Robin Williams and Billy Crystal and Letterman came into our office, I was helpful, and you know, I liked him. Also, one day, Jack Rollins says, "Robert, I want to ask you," and of course, only you know what he sounds like. It's a great imitation, the kind that will end a career because no one else knows who he is. I also do Aaron Burr. I do offbeat ones. Where was I?
Jack Rollins.
Huh?
Jack Rollins.
Yeah, so Rollins asked me, Woody needs an insert into his movie, Take the Money and Run, because the character says fuck and the warden, and it's going to be X or R or something, and they don't want it to be. Would you do him a favor and go down? So I go with Woody down 7th Avenue to the recording studio, and these 2 guys are leaning against a building with the smoke. One goes, "Hey, Woody Allen." He goes, "Assholes." I don't know why, you know, maybe he was in a bad mood. The man is a genius, okay? Man is a genius. So we've had this before, where great work and great human beings don't necessarily go. We go into the recording studio, and who was the famous narrator? Jackson Beck, thank you. Jackson Beck is just finishing, this distinguished guy that did all the World War II narrations already. And he was arrested for having intimate relations with a flounder. That all right, Woody? You know, that all right, Woody? And I replaced, so I am in one Woody Allen film. In the long shot of the warden, I am his voice. That's about it. The Nick games. He invited me to his big New Year's Eve party he gave, and whatever. It was minimal. Jack, for my first gig at Mr. Kelly's in Chicago, opening for Sarah Vaughan. Not bad. Sarah Vaughan. It was Woody's closing night, and the stand-up was so funny, you know. I become a corporation since last year, and they voted me out, and you know, a watch that my grandfather sold to me on his deathbed, and you know, and he was nice to me, good luck and all that. I just really, through the years, he called me Bob, and he was nice, and that's it. Standing next to his wife in the club at Madison Square Garden, he doesn't even introduce his wife, you know. I mean, I don't know. Domanians, his friends, were really nice people, especially John.
Right.
Gene almost wrecked Saturday Night Live single-handedly, but that's another story.
Did you go to those Knicks games when they won the championship last time in '73?
I was sitting when they were in the finals against Houston, and people stopped watching the game. They're watching O.J. Simpson on the road in his car. Oh, wow. I was sitting with the general manager's wife. When they were champs then, no. I've been invited the last 25, 30 years. I don't even want to go anymore. It's a hassle. But you get a beautiful meal, and it's courtside. I'm watching the games, but I don't care about going to the stadium anymore. Television is one of the greatest inventions of all time. And you know what's better? DVR. What was that? English accent, I still don't get it. You can rule the world. I'm taping the Knicks now. I'm saying taping. DVR? I can go through those commercials. I can control time. I don't have to wait for it. I wouldn't watch a sports event live. And these announcers for the Yankees, they think it's a talk show. I remember when I was in the minor leagues, and there's a game going on, let it breathe. I'm going to have lunch next week with John Sterling, who just retired from the radio. That's real stuff. The game is going with Susie Waldman. Not this, I remember when I was, in the minors, the spin rate on his thing. Leave me alone.
I want to thank Robert Klein for this wonderful conversation. Thank everybody for coming.
Thank you. I had a great time. Jason, thanks.